Report of the Archivist Clem Zid, Azure Archive Branch, Victor 749 Phalanx, Cycle 112117044. Okay, the light is on, so I am definitely recording this time. Here we go, take 2. Our ongoing catalog of life forms within the Abinishan system, locally called Sol, continues to deliver intriguing results. Presently, our studies are focused on the life forms indigenous to the ice moons of the 5th and 6th planets. We have for now decided not to inform the one population about the other in order to avoid any potential interlunar antagonism. Meanwhile, observation of the Abinishan 3 lacuna continues despite a lack of concrete evidence to directly examine. Levels of ambient akashic radiation in the vicinity of the former planet, locally called Earth, continue to decline at predicted rates. We advise that... hello, what is this? A ship has entered the system, Nasiri make, heavily modified, no identification being broadcast. Requesting identification, request pending. Ship is running a Class Q full spectrum scan of the lacuna. Request pending. Here we go. Ship is registered to a group of Earth native metamorphs who call themselves the New Wave. Individual identifying themselves as Locus claims that ship and occupants have been off-world for some time due to a, quote, transdimensional crisis, unquote. Cross-referencing. Records indicate that New Wave returned to Earth from a spineward location shortly before the planet's disappearance, and no departure of any flagged individual is recorded after that point. If I were an analyst, I would feel the need to resolve these two data points. How is it that A, this set of individuals is present on planet during the disappearance event, and yet B, this set of individuals is entering the system now, post-event, from a spineward location? Happily, I am not an analyst. End of record. Welcome, true believer, to the Chimera. This is a role-playing adventure podcast where a group of college friends and longtime campaign collaborators get back in the saddle. Right now our campaign is The Old Bones. Our cast is a multi-species group of misfits crewing a mysterious alien spaceship in a near-future superhero space opera. We are playing with a pre-release version of the StoryPath system that will be powering Onyx Path's Trinity Continuum games, in which we've bent and folded to cover the gaps and suit our particular weird needs. I'm Vin the Bait, and I am playing Cidra, a living financial instrument, and joining me today are...
I'm Braden Lamb. I'm playing Dang, an energy-eating space rhino bodyguard.
I'm Casey Smith, playing Molly Harrow, a human technophile and gadgeteer, and the captain of the ship Chimera.
I'm Kelly Weissman Asperuth Jackson. I portray Theron Melanthios, a 7-foot-tall heretical catman.
I am Jeffrey Bard, and I play Releth, a galactic lawyer from the wrong side of the Akashic Bleed, and pilot of a mech that goes by the name of Moonin.
As well as Josh Hall-Bachner, our beloved GM, who you will be hearing, now you are hearing him.
So, when last we left our intrepid heroes, they had just agreed to sit down and have a meeting with 2 members of the New Wave, who are a former Earth superhero team that Molly has some familiarity with. Did I describe and give names? Maybe
yes.
I should just do that again. Okay. But just to quickly cover this, there's Inkling, who is a shorter woman with kind of an indigenous complexion, in an all-black outfit that covers almost everything but her mouth, including her eyes, and that has these fine silver geometric patterns that are kind of all over it and that kind of glow and shift a little with, kind of how you look at it. And then Jackalope, who is an even shorter man kind of dark ochre skin, wearing, I guess, what you'd call a Western outfit, including a gaucho hat, but with bands of red, yellow, and green in various places. And then he has a small pair of antlers that come out of holes that are kind of built into his hat to allow it to sit around those. And so you've met up with them. You're in the La Fin de l'Univers, which is the bar at the center of the Last Resort that is magically blocked from people committing violence on one another. And you guys have basically found a small table off to the side somewhere to talk about this. So they've recruited you basically because there's something that they're interested in retrieving that they've said that you might be able to help them out with. So that's kind of where we are. Who wants to kind of lead in on this?
I mean, I can as the human and I guess the captain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Molly's gonna say, so what item would you like us to get for you?
Inkling leans forward. She's kind of taking point on this at the moment. She goes, well, so we don't know exactly what it is, per se.
Okay, a challenge.
So we've been looking into, you do know that the Earth is gone, right?
I noticed, yeah.
We've been looking into that a little bit. There's very little information in general, but we've been able to, through a little bit of hunting and looking around, figure out a few minor bits of information about this. And one of the things that we located is a very specific type of Akashic signature that seemed to be present in the area of the solar system afterwards. It faded out eventually, but from reports right afterwards, this was what was detected. And we traced down something with a similar frequency here to the Last Resort to a location deep inside the Cathedral District. So we think that there's something related, and we want to get it.
What are you asking us for? I mean, you guys are pretty capable from what I remember of your adventures back home.
There is... She kind of stops and thinks for a second. We could theoretically perform an incursion here to get this, but we're looking at something in one of the deepest parts of the district, very close to the central temple where Raimon Ven, who is the head of kind of the cathedral group here, has the headquarters of the entire organization. So it's heavily defended. It's very visible, and it makes it more difficult to get in easily without attracting a lot of attention before we have everything that we need. So
you think we're less conspicuous?
No. We want a multi-pronged attempt here with probably two separate groups at least moving towards the object itself and somebody to provide a distraction.
Gotcha.
Are we the first group, the second group, or the distraction?
You're probably some combination thereof. The two of us will, she kind of takes her thumb and gestures between the two of them, and Jackalope tips his hat. We'll head in, as one group. We'll need you to split up to provide the rest.
What do we know about the cathedral?
Okay, so, as I mentioned last time, the deal with the Last Resort is that the whole population area of the kind of like center, the center where the planet has split, is divided up into three sections, each of which kind of has a different theme, is essentially run by a different gang, more or less. So the cathedral is basically kind of a large pseudo-religious order that also provides what could be described as upscale magical services in order to basically fund itself. So
okay.
They're a lot smaller. Oh.
So an Akashic signature coming out of there is not a shock.
It's not unusual at all. But this one was, basically it was strong and it lined up with the information that they had in a way that they had not seen anywhere else before. So they don't have as many people as some of the other ones, like with the Bazaar where you guys were earlier, there's just tons and tons of people because it's this giant shopping district. And a lot of different people who have very, like, small connections in, they're basically just part of the protection racket as a cost of doing business in this place that gets a lot of foot traffic and where you can sell questionable things. This one is a lot smaller because it's kind of it's a defined order. You have to kind of be initiated and all this kind of stuff. So the number of people who actually are part of the cathedral organization is a lot smaller, but almost everybody is capable at some level of at least, basic magic, like simple types of like akashic effects and knowledge. Mm-hmm. So every one of them is kind of like a little bit more dangerous or more relevant when you deal with them one-on-one. Their typical kind of style of dress is basically like nice, like by default everybody just kind of wears what you would consider to be like formal clothes from like whatever planet they're from or something. Mm-hmm. And the main distinguishing thing is that everybody who's part of the order has these crimson sashes with the logo of the order, which is kind of a split red half circle, which actually represent, is kind of supposed to like be a stylized version of the broken planet, and then an upside down white V laid on top of it.
I'm sorry. The order is just the order, or the order is something?
Yeah, the cathedral order, I guess, is what you would say. Yeah.
So they're an organization with whom one could like seek to do business.
Yes, typically yes.
So we could just approach them and like theoretically try to buy something.
Yep.
Okay.
But, basically, what they know, right, is that this object is here. It's somewhere deep inside. So, like, whoever's dealing with it, it's not just something that somebody brought to kind of get scanned by, like, the frontline people at the, like, help desk. So, there's somebody important.
This isn't an iPod shuffle.
No, right. So there's somebody reasonably important somewhere in the organization who is actually dealing with this, and mm-hmm. It's not something that is being, I guess, like, it's not something that's like clearly on mm-hmm. offer, at least. Like, it's, there would be mm-hmm. certain things where even if, it's kind of a little bit secret and there's kind of back channels or something where there's something that's being sold or there's some service that's connected to it or something where, people with connections could kind of get access to whatever it is, just mm-hmm. kind of on the up and up. And there's nothing like that. So
Cidra,
mm-hmm.
could you maybe look into this cathedral order's finances to discover if there have been any significant purchases recently that have not then become transaction teases that other people could click on?
I can absolutely do that. 12.
Dang.
Plus scale.
12 plus scale?
Yeah. That's 12 on the dice. 12 on
Jesus
9.
Christ. Okay, yeah, that's a lot.
How many 10s did you get?
3.
Wow.
4?
Yeah. 4. Yeah.
4. Yeah, that'll do it.
Well,
that's 2/3 of the way right there. So,
yeah.
So kind of the baseline thing here, right? So there are these 3 different groups. All of them are extremely large, right? Like this planet in general is like one of the biggest sources of kind of like all manner of illicit and semi-illicit, business in the entire galaxy. So a huge amount of money flows through here in every possible direction. And they're all these 3 orders have a ton of interconnected relationships as well. Like obviously, they're by default, they kind of are this state of Cold War with each other. They're all in conflict for resources and they're kind of always spatting and sometimes it turns hot, but they're also deeply interconnected, monetarily, because they all provide kind of different things. So there's all kinds of circumstances where they need to, either work together or they both get involved in different ways in the same deal, all that kind of stuff. So the baseline here is basically just there's a large amount of money moving around everywhere here to the order, away from the order, through other groups, on the planet, as well as, people coming through off planet, all the time. So that's the base noise that you're kind of sorting through here. When you kind of look into what's, been exchanged recently, the first most notable thing that you see is, and this is kind of like the opposite almost of what you would normally look for here. A lot of the time if you're looking for something unusual, you're like, oh, okay, where can I find like a particularly large, amount of money that's deposited or something like that. What you can identify instead is, there's a certain sense where like if anything's going on the ledger or kind of the books or something, you can kind of get a sense of how significant an entry it is. And so there's at least one very recent one which has a great deal of significance and only like an extremely minor token actual payment associated with it. So that kind of stands out because it doesn't line up. It kind of suggests that there's something outside of like the monetary system basically that's going on that's connected to whatever this exchange is. And so, you see that. There's also, and these seem to be unrelated. There's also, and let me just double check something really quick here. Why not? Yeah. So there's also a completely different place where probably the second largest transaction that you see, within the last year or so is also on the books just lately, connected to something that doesn't really seem to have like a full-fledged kind of financial entity. So it's not like a company. It's not something that kind of has formal existence, based on, what you can kind of piece together on it and kind of the way that it's transacted here. You would guess basically that it's a minor religious organization somewhere, and basically just kind of paying in cash, but a very large amount of cash for something. And as far as you can tell, these are disconnected, right? These are just the two different recent scenarios that kind of match this picture. And then, the third thing is that there's some financial connections in the past, in each case kind of like number of occasions, not necessarily individually any of them particularly significant, but there are a number of individual interactions with both the excess, unsurprisingly, but also Galactic Collections LLC.
Really?
Oh.
So they're in the financial soup in one way or another with both of those.
All right, so I'm going to firstly just like make notes of all those transactions and sort of add them to the dossiers we have on those people.
Yep.
But can I also essentially for those two big glaring items check records for corresponding work orders of people who would have had to ship or move them?
Check where?
Like with a timestamp?
Sort of the obvious places, ports, any, bureaucratic organizations that regulate, like, the traffic, that kind of thing.
Bribes,
but really more like work orders.
Yeah, bribes is going to be more fruitful here, though, I think.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking if they're not going through official channels, you're not going to have any work orders. Yeah. Like if these are smugglers.
Yeah, but sometimes you pay a guy to move a box and he doesn't ask what's in the box.
Right. I see what you're saying. And that was a big enough role that I don't need you to like go do a separate one for this or anything.
Yeah.
Well, and particularly like because the big challenge there, absent like the really good roll on the dice themselves, is that like the cathedral, like I said, it's a very large organization, so the amount of benefit you can get from scale is much more dialed down. But you have all those base successes, and then any of this type of information, you're dealing with other, groups. So with this with way less scale to apply. So it makes sense that you could just kind of dig around.
Yeah. Also, technically, I get a second question from expert researcher. So.
Oh, okay. Yes. Then, so for one of those, you are going to find something. This one seems to be connected to the second of the transactions, so the large monetary one, you do find something that seems to have been kind of an off-label, basically like a low-end cargo ship. So, somebody trying to operate with kind of like something that didn't look like it was particularly important, that did have an extended docking period and did basically tie in with people renting local transportation, basically. So, like, what you get the impression that this ship came in probably with a reasonably sizable, crew dedicated to whatever this thing was, and then arranged for some kind of local transport that would allow them to move an object without, like, a lot of suspicion into the cathedral district.
Mm-hmm.
And, and based on what they got, at least whatever this thing is, it doesn't seem like it's necessarily that large because there's no vehicles that have a kind of there's nothing that you'd get that's like for oversized loads or anything. It's like, somebody got like some Escalades basically. And
how you do it.
Can we get any particulars on the crew that came in with this?
I mean, it's guys. Like, it's basically like looking at this, like, from kind of the financial research standpoint, like, the impression you would get is, like, this is a case where there's, like, 3 or 4 layers of couriers that are connected in various spots of this process. So rather than having it at any given point with anybody notable, it's like a lot of different people who've been paid to move something a short distance, and it's not really any different than the other stuff that they deal with in that sense.
And besides, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, so just probably a bunch of people who didn't ask questions.
Yep.
And besides being...
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and so the other conclusion you can draw from that kind of is just that it's not something that needed to be moved by people with, like, a huge amount of specialty knowledge or anything. Like, they could just have, like, random people do it and have it be functional still.
Mm-hmm. And besides being, like, deep in the cathedral district, there's nothing more specific about current location.
For that one? Let me think, actually. Yeah, so with that, I think actually you can at least roll to track down the location. I think that's a little bit more removed from the full, like, concept there. You probably, like, the money is probably not the best route to try to track down where it is, but you have enough information that you can kind of apply some other investigative technique here, I guess, if that's what you're looking to.
Okay. I mean, do we know, besides, I guess we don't know what it is, we just know that there's a trail with a thing that's not very large.
Yep.
Okay. Then I might try to do some co-hacking to try and figure out what the money trail is actually connected to, like what the subject is and where it is. So I think, what am I doing? This is reason and technology. Does that sound right? Or would it be...
It's
That's pretty much the role.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a helpful. 6, and then I get one more for having an electronic specialty, so 7.
Yeah, so
I didn't even add in my specialties.
So the way that this whole place is kind of laid out, right? It's it's got this kind of like purposely like retro almost construction. Like everything is kind of done up in stone, and kind of these wide open boulevards everywhere through this district. All kind of like long straight lines, but at different kind of weird angles that make various shapes if you kind of view it from above. So there's all kinds of like weird mystical symbolism baked into like the map of the place. But basically at the very center, there's kind of a large septagonal place with like a single tall building with multiple kind of spires, which is kind of the centralized location. And that's where the guy who runs the place is. And then there's kind of a series of maybe 2 rings worth of other large buildings emanating around that. So there's like 7 in each ring that kind of are around that are different sizes and kind of visible silhouettes and everything, but are all kind of larger collectively than everything else in the district outside of that. So for this item, you can kind of narrow it down to about like 2 or maybe 3 of the buildings in the inner ring there, based on like where it seems like people Because probably like the way you do this, honestly, is like look into the vehicles, try to track them like physically. So you've got something that's parked in a spot basically where somebody could have moved something into one of these.
Okay. And then there was that other large transaction that seemed unrelated to this other one, and it was made prior, like basically it looked like some other religious group gave the cathedral order money for something as yet to be delivered. Is that kind of
okay? So let me just to try to break it down. So there's two items that Cidra noted. The first one is the significant transaction with almost no money associated with that. That one,
right? And that was what we just followed.
No, you followed the other one. You followed the one connected to the religious cult, which had the ship arrive here, delivered the item to one of these.
Gotcha. So then there's the other one.
So there's the other one. It doesn't seem like, based on the record, it doesn't seem to be related to like the acquisition or delivery of an object, anything like that, in quite the same way. And there isn't like a physical trail quite the same way. So it's not as clear what that one is kind of in reference to.
Okay. So we can't get much more of a target or a location because there doesn't seem to be an object?
Right.
Okay.
So more of possibly a payment for some kind of service?
That would be your guess, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the notebook thing, the legal pad that the kid had that I think Roleth has now.
Mm-hmm.
Remind me of what's its deal besides someone being super pissed off that they don't have it and it being related to like Akashic.
Yeah, so the deal with the legal pad is it belongs to one Ella Persephone, who was the opposing counsel in the trial by combat that resulted in Roleth's kind of unfiltered exposure to, I'm forgetting what the word is here, but the
empathic resonance of an entire planet dying.
Yeah. So she was kind of on the other side of that. She also has a matching mech that's kind of the other half of the pair from Roleth's Moonin. And basically the legal pad was something that was used regularly in these types of contractual situations because it had the ability to, with somebody with magical legal training, to notarize it basically, to create like contractual arrangements that had a degree of like magical enforcement attached to them.
Okay.
So the idea was that you would use something like this and then it would tie into, you could pull a sheet off of this and draft an agreement on it and everybody signs it in blood or whatever. And then the result is that like there's some like innate force to that rather than just like legal force.
Roleth, did you ever have your own legal pad like that?
I had access to legal pads like that, but I never had my own. They're really high ticket items, usually owned by firms. So you could check one out and write up a contract on behalf of your firm, but owning one personally is pretty rare.
Okay, so the fact that Ella does is atypical.
Yeah, she's pretty powerful.
Yeah, you really want to kind of picture this in terms of like what scenario this was. Is that like she's the ultra rock star, like super successful, super wealthy, like celebrity lawyer almost. And Roleth is Better Call Saul. So that's kind of the scope of David versus Goliath situation you were looking at in the actual legal case there.
Okay. So you were just a little bit outclassed.
Yeah, I was fighting above my weight. I could have handled her. They tricked me though. They played dirty.
Oh.
She played dirty.
So the other thing Molly would like to know from Jackalope and Inkling is if they have any kind of recording or something she can observe that's this Akashic pattern so that she can identify it when she sees it again, if they can find it.
So they have, it's pretty much exactly that, right? Like they have a recording from, some scout ship or something that came into the area shortly after the disappearance and basically just kind of made a spectral recording of everything around there. So they can download that to you.
Okay.
You basically see that there's some kind of residual energy in the area that would have been the location of the planet, and kind of stretched out around like the orbit, sort of, that has an unusual vibe, basically. That's what you're looking at.
Josh, do you want to talk a little bit about what's known of Earth's disappearance, since this is the first time it's really come up in game?
Yeah, so hold on, let me just consult my list here. Basically, the situation here was that not too long before the present time in game, the Earth had kind of made first contact, so to speak, with larger galactic civilization. They were, the humans were kind of presenting as, a very backwater species, unimportant finger planet from like the far reaches of the galaxy. So, not something that a lot of people had a lot of invested in necessarily, but they were starting to reach out and connect to the greater galactic, civilization. A little while after that, there was something that occurred on Earth called the Lagrange-Cartan incident, which is basically the only important thing in kind of galactic history that Earth has ever been involved in before, the actual disappearance, which basically wound up with a 4-species fleet blockading the planet and enforcing a travel ban. So all of a sudden, while this kind of initial step of first contact was going on, all of a sudden these aliens have basically blockaded the planet, and only certain political and scientific representatives are even allowed up to orbit, much less to transit to any other part of the galaxy. So this went on for a while. Eventually, whatever the situation was kind of wound up resolved, and it dialed down to a much smaller force kind of hanging out in the area, but no longer enforcing a blockade or anything. Some people set up stuff to kind of monitor some unusual stuff that was kind of observed in the area, including the Azure Archive, who basically set up a base on the moon to kind of watch some things on Earth that seemed to have unusual qualities. And then basically they were able to kind of record that anybody within the solar system basically at some point suddenly kind of experienced this weird sensation, like the air being extremely hot and extremely cold at the same time, people's vision inverting itself no matter what they were looking at, and a loud buzzing sound followed by a blorp, which anybody anywhere in the solar system basically heard. And at the end of that, all of those phenomena instantly disappeared. Everything seemed to go back to normal, but if anybody checked, the Earth was no longer present.
Earth and Moon, I assume.
No, Moon was still there.
Oh, Moon was still there. So the Moon's still hanging out.
Moon is still hanging out.
Is it orbiting something?
Yeah.
Shift to now it's in a steady orbit around the sun. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's for something like that, there are enough people with enough technology that it's in that circumstance, they can adjust a planetary orbit or something. If, and there were some, like I mentioned, the Azure Archive, some kind of interstellar organizations that had some, presence there. So, so the Moon is basically kind of the new third planet, basically. It's still there. Earth disappeared, and, no evidence of it being destroyed or anything. There was no debris. There was no lingering heat signature. Nothing. No kind of mass being detected somewhere nearby. It really seems to have just disappeared.
Yeah, Pluto was all "who's not a planet now."
That's right.
And that happened about 3 years ago. Is that right?
I think that's about right. I don't remember exactly what we settled on with that, but it was in that neighborhood. It was between 3 and 6, I think. I'd have to look at. I've got notes on that somewhere that I will look at.
Recent-ish, but not super recent.
Yeah, it was recent-ish enough that it was while Molly was an adult and off working,
off-world,
but long enough ago that she had time to develop a drinking problem and lose an arm. So
Yeah. Get her shit broken and then back together again, basically.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Anybody else have any other questions before I guess we go snooping in the Cathedral District?
Yeah, Dang's been kind of shifting his weight back and forth, and his natural cynicism and suspicion is gonna rear its ugly head, and he's like, "So, you superheroes, what were you up to when the Earth went blorp? How come you weren't there?"
They kind of sigh a little bit. At the time, we were engaged in a late stage of what at the time seemed like a very important and rather intricate investigation involving a series of different species that had been involved in some unusual activity and politics on Earth. We were theoretically contracted by two governments to look into this, and it led us down this long rabbit hole that involved some of our longest term foes. And she's starting to say this, and Jackalope kind of elbows her. She goes, "Anyway, we left to deal with some aliens who were connected to the whole situation. When we got back, it was gone."
Basically, they were in the middle of a major cosmic crossover at the time.
Yep. They got editorialized here. They had one storyline going on, and then the Home Office was just like, "No, we're getting rid of it." That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Elseworlds? No? Damn it.
Yeah. And so the writers had to adjust.
So what became of the rest of the new wave?
Oh, we've got a few things going on.
Okay.
We don't have a lot. We don't usually have a lot of other people to draw on at this point, so we spend a lot of time split up.
All right. Thanks for answering my question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry for your loss.
She nods.
The "I'm sorry for your loss" is pretty well rehearsed.
Neither of them are visibly armed. Is that right, Josh?
That's correct.
No one's toting a clear weapon. And they're both fairly short in stature, we established?
Yes.
Trying to figure
I mean,
out.
Jackalope has antlers.
Right,
Yes.
so that's adding to it. I think, so Theron looks at Inkling and says, with a look that his shipmates can probably recognize at this point as grave, although it probably doesn't read very clearly to someone who's not used to Ilori features. Like sort of somber look, and the dots on his face are moving very slowly, and he says, "I hope that some of your children survived."
Given that she has a mask that covers most of her face, it is very difficult to read her reaction to that, but she does
Yes.
not say anything.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
So at that point, they are basically gonna kind of slip away. So they're gonna kind of follow up one route. They want to avoid sharing notes too much on this, so that there doesn't get any cross interference run. And so.
There's no attempt to coordinate this timing-wise? They're just going to go...
Well, unless you guys
their
are planning on taking an unusually long time waiting beforehand, let's assume that, there's a time frame that you pick, but,
Okay, so we have established
it's really
a
kind of
time,
up to-
and then we'll just leave that ambiguous so we don't have to worry. Okay, all right.
Question: did we agree on payment or anything? I don't remember if we got to that. Are we doing this out of the kindness of our hearts?
Oh, hell no.
I mean, they agreed, they presented it as if they were hiring you, and the kind of question is, what do you want from people? Because, money is not really an issue in a certain sense. So, you're kind of at the level where with most of these things, you're probably trading on a favor type economy, so,
Yeah, item for the parking lot, why don't we all have mink coats and walk in humidors?
That is a good question.
But okay, so they did present themselves as having a job for us. So it would be nice to have them at least ask us directly what we want.
Do you know what you want?
You know what I want? I want you guys to let everybody know, because you're big shots, right? You're big shots around here, right? Inkling, Jackalope, everybody knows your name.
They almost in complete unison do a almost overly flippant shrug.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you talk to people. You know,
I talk.
You look like the type.
Are you currently in the mech as you're saying this, or are you out of the mech?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm in the mech.
Yeah.
Well, I have these cards, right? How about you take a couple hundred of them each, and if anybody's looking for legal representation, you just hand them out for me, okay? And we'll call it square. I mean, me personally, not the rest of the group.
She looks down at them. You know, takes a stack from you.
I have a little pocket in the mech that like extends, and then I can take them out and hand them to her.
Little business card dispenser
She kind
slot.
of picks them up. She kind of looks at them a little bit, takes one off to kind of read, looks at both sides a little, puts it back. She kind of is holding them in the hand, and then she kind of like waves it up and down, and they, kind of disappear like in a magic act.
Ooh, fancy! Yeah, do that. Do that when you're giving it out.
Ooh.
Anything else?
I think I want to wait and see what we find before we talk about payment and favor exchanges. I kind of want to know what we're dealing with.
Okay, then.
All right, we ready to do some things?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Let's do some things.
So, given what you guys know so far, what kind of... give me the gist of what type of plan you want to put together here.
So we have a sense that the thing that we're looking for is in one of 3 buildings. Is that right?
One of this, yeah.
Okay, I guess there are 2 things. But it seemed like the more promising of the 2 things. Do I have that wrong?
The one that's actually a thing.
Right. Okay.
So it's like a 1 in 6 chance having the right thing.
Right. This is a pretty diverse place. How much do each of the team members stick out?
On this planet, it's really hard to stick out. It's certainly possible, but I don't think any of you really are wildly outside the norm.
Right. I mean, basically, we're in Mos Eisley Cantina.
It's true.
We're just other weirdos. It's all weirdos. It's weirdos all the way down. So
all the way down.
Right.
Yeah, Ralef, if he's in Moonin, is going to stand out a little bit just because it's kind of interesting to have a big, impressive mech suit, regardless of whether you've seen other ones. It's still interesting, each individual one.
Yeah, he's pretty much always in a limo.
Yeah, exactly. And Dang is probably able to catch a little bit of attention from certain people just who are particularly aware of certain individual bits of galactic history that he kind of intersects with, but not most people aren't going to notice anything.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know what these 3 buildings are? Do they serve any specific type of purpose, or are they just kind of fancy buildings?
So basically the way that these things are divided up is there's some kind of extremely Byzantine internal division within the Cathedral Order that is not necessarily self-evident facing outwards. They've got some extremely elaborate set of magical symbological language that they kind of tie into everything. And so there's all these different ways that there are correspondences between different items of different types, and subsets of those wind up kind of dividing into these different groups that make up the larger group. And so each one of these buildings is kind of associated with one of these things. So,
is there any way I could try and interpret that Akashic meaning?
Yeah, hold on just a second. Yeah, so basically what you're looking at for each one of these is something that has 3 words, basically, that are connected, and between them kind of make up the symbolic meaning, basically, of whichever group is associated with that. So, for the 3...
I have a skill trick called Words Behind Words.
What's that one do?
Associated with enigmas.
Does that just give you a bonus to a roll, or does that do something specific?
I'm not entirely sure, actually. I'm trying to figure that out.
It's in the document 3, I think, is where the skill tricks are.
Not seeing it in 3.
So it's a custom one. It's when other people speak, this character listens. He hears the subtext, the unspoken, and the carefully chosen relationships between each word. This functions as code cracker, but rather than applying to investigations, it applies to parsing the true meaning behind spoken words. When a player takes a piercing deception action or obscure knowledge action, they may add their Enigma skill to their dice pool.
Okay. Yeah, give me a roll then.
I'm assuming this is going to be cunning or reason.
I think cunning for this.
Okay. 6 successes.
Okay. So the 3 buildings that you've identified that are kind of within the zone around in terms of delivery here, so like I was saying, each one of them, there's kind of like 3 words that are kind of connected together, and the kind of implicit meaning generated by this ties into whatever the organization, the sub-organization in question is kind of up to. So the 3 buildings that you're looking at here are respectively Chocolate Judgment Awareness, Guitar Climate Expression, and Bloodbird Establishment.
All right. Give me the second one again.
Guitar Climate Expression.
Guitar Climate Expression. And what was the third one?
Bloodbird Awareness.
Bloodbird Awareness.
Or sorry, Bloodbird Establishment. Sorry, Establishment. Bloodbird Establishment.
Blood.
I was looking at the
Bird
wrong
Establishment.
Line. Yeah, they're in the Slack if you want to look at them.
Oh, nice. So to figure out the relationship between the 3 words in order to figure out what purpose the building has.
Mm-hmm.
Chocolate Judgment Awareness. Like weight loss program?
Pray the pounds away.
Guitar Climate Expression.
Mm-hmm.
Bloodbird Establishment.
I mean, this is kind of like the translation, basically. Like, this is like symbologically encoded or something, but this is kind of the closest, linguistic expression of what that is. It doesn't have a big sign on it that says Guitar Climate Expression.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of groaning when we figure out what this all actually means.
I mean, if I got a big present, I would want to know if it's made of chocolate. So that'd be the first place I'd take it.
Bloodbird, in its simplest reference, could be Nasiri.
Mm-hmm.
Or in a slightly less simple reference, could also be Ardorian, as that is a common symbol of the world of Ardor.
Mm-hmm. And there's a bird-like quality to Munnin, isn't there?
Ah, damn it, everyone's a bird.
Yeah, there is.
Well, so maybe it's like an embassy of some sort.
Possible.
Guitar Climate Expression.
It's like the feeling of the room, or like the
Climate expression.
Like expression like smile or scowl, or like expression like...
Well, I mean, a guitar expresses, right? Like there's... To use music is a language.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, Bloodbird Establishment is kind of the most obviously ominous.
It's it's also kind of the most nounish, right? Like it's definitely a place, right? Like there is bloodbirds there.
Well, we assume.
Well, I mean, I think that's probably the most straightforward way to read it. The establishment in the sense of a physical location, right? Like a business or a
Dang has got to figure out what he's going to wear in this place if everybody's dressed up. Because, I mean, he's still got his old military uniform, which he's been told many times, do not wear that.
Correct.
But dressing up for a Ruibin is naked.
Right.
I feel like do not wear that also.
Yes.
Dang, do we need to go shopping?
Shopping montage.
We can do that.
I just want to see him like coming out of the dressing room in like 20 different outfits.
One of them is next generation era security uniform with a metal bandolier.
One of them is definitely just a white linen suit.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is a zoot suit.
With the hat. Gotta have the hat.
So the upshot of this is that Dang ends up in a tux,
Nice.
and everybody gives the thumbs up, right?
That's the payoff. But you gotta put in the work for it. You gotta earn that outcome first.
So, like, the door opens and you close up on everyone else's face, and they're all their eyes widen a little bit. In like that's the one.
There's a soft focus on him, little sparklies all over the place.
Mysterious rose falls to the floor.
Oh god.
Yep.
Okay, so we're puzzling through this while we're watching Dang try on a series of suits, right? That's the
Right, so everyone's just randomly making suggestions for, like, what these things could mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much a brick wall, I think, at this point.
Okay.
All right, well, I think we should head to one of them and see what it is, and maybe that will give us a better sense of what the other two are. Like, if we can...
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, maybe we should do just a bit of recon before we actually dive into plan.
Hey, can we just walk up to
Yeah.
these places? Is it, like, on lockdown, or is this walking down a
We can
street?
certainly head in that direction and see what kind of
Yeah.
resistance presents itself.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of settlement here, this is one of the 3 big districts, so you can certainly just, like, walk in there. So if you want to, like, head in that direction as kind of a group and, like, look at it as you get closer, we can do that.
We might also want to split up at least slightly. We have this scene. Unfortunately, it's a scene that is mostly a montage, so it's maybe not the most enjoyable one to participate in. We have this scene to pay off with Dang ending up in the suit, right? So that needs time to unspool. Some of us, not all of us are needed for that scene. Some of us could go explore the Cathedral District and report back.
That's true.
I think that's probably a good plan. Who do you want to send?
Probably I'll take Dang to get dressed. Since we're also probably the least useful in terms of visual recon.
I'm kind of imagining, like, Stan Alive playing as he's walking down the street.
You can tell by the way I use my walk, I'm a Ruaben.
Yeah, no time to talk.
Wow.
I'm incapable
No
of
ability
talking.
to
Don't
talk.
have the ability to.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Jeff, think of who you're talking to here. None of us live by that.
Of which I'm really glad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm volunteering to be one of the recon people.
Oh yeah, you're good at stealth.
Who's going with him?
Yeah, it's kind of one of my
Anybody?
things.
I might go with him because I'm good at, like, hacking security feeds.
Yeah,
so-
you can also
Makes sense.
see the energy
And you've got
signatures.
the
Yeah,
Akashic
Right.
vision
yeah. So
with the all-seeing eye of Agamotto.
that's just the left eye of my
Okay.
goggle.
Great. So Molly and Theron will go recon while Rolith and Cidra let
Yeah.
Dang know
Yeah.
thumbs up, thumbs down on his outfit choices.
I
So-
forgot I would totally know suits, so
Mhm.
it'll benefit.
So,
Yeah.
you start to head in. Like I was saying, this district, it's all kind of wide cobblestone boulevards, buildings in a lot of different kind of shapes and sizes, but all kind of done up in old stonework or brick or other things that are kind of like, at least in terms of the exterior cladding, kind of designed to make them look like, certainly pre-spacefaring type building designs.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily like a ton of like totally unifying architecture, but enough to at least kind of give the whole place this kind of like ye old vibe. In most of the sections near to where you get in, there's either, there's like a lot of places that are dwellings. There's people with like signboards out for like low level like magical services or weird kind of knickknacks or kind of like little, I guess what I'd say kind of like micro churches, like different little fronts with very specific religious order descriptions kind of above the door where you can kind of stop in and get services or perform worship or, do exorcisms or whatever it is that you need to do.
Exorcisms.
And there's just a lot of this, right? Like, this is kind of like, this is a place that you go if you're from some obscure sect in, like, the opposite end of the galaxy and there's no other churches nearby. There's probably somebody who at least is, like, ordinated around here, whether or not they're, like, necessarily completely in touch with the spirit of the, of the faith. They can at least do the motions and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of kind of that stuff. People walking around, but it's pretty quiet, a lot less busy, a lot less population in general than the bazaar where you were earlier. As you're moving in towards the center, you have to make a few bends. These are long, straight boulevards, but none of them kind of cut directly from the border all the way into kind of the central area. So you have to make a couple bends to kind of get there. And as you get closer, there's kind of a couple things. One, as you nearer to the center, there are kind of several like raised levels, basically. So spots where you get to a road and it has a staircase up, and then there's kind of a flat ground above it, and the buildings kind of come off of that. So there's a few of those. And as you start to get towards the center area with those 2 rings of 7 buildings each, you start to see more and more people who are clearly part of the proper employ of the Cathedral Order rather than just people who work in this area. So a lot more people with the red sashes, the symbol pins, and a lot of them, kind of demonstrating like a certain amount of watchfulness. A lot of people with like long staves that are kind of like, kind of hovering near corners, kind of like visibly watching the area. A number of places where there are groups of them set up at tables at major intersections. You basically kind of get the sense that there's this certain level of security, not a sharp cordon, but, people kind of watching out. And clearly, like, as you get in closer, it's going to be more and more so.
Are the folks wearing sashes and pins, again, pretty diverse? Like, it's not one species in particular. It's kind of...
Really, really not one at all. All kinds of different things, Just a range of different species from around the galaxy. It really kind of has one of those like acquisitive melting pot kind of things where like they clearly have high standards in terms of what you have to do in order to be part of this, but they also aggressively recruit from kind of any kind of person.
So Molly's going to look at Theron and say, I think we need to get us some pins and sashes.
That seems like a good idea. So do you want to just jump cut to me smashing 2 guys' heads together?
Yep.
Or...
Yep. Pretty much.
Basically, the only question in my head was whether we were going to jump cut to you actually smashing the 2 heads together, or jump cut to the 2 of you wearing the sashes and 2 guys just like splayed out like down the stairs behind you. But either way. Okay, you have sashes.
All right, there we go.
All right.
So now, as we move about with the sashes on, does anything change? It's like when we pass by the sort of... No. As the security starts to thicken.
The most obvious thing is that there's just a notably decreased level of overall attention. It's not like nobody's looking at you, but obviously, we're talking about a lot of people who are typically trained to watch for people outside the club. So there's nothing particularly unusual about how the 2 of you look with those on, so they just kind of slide over you a little bit. So definitely less security attention than you would have otherwise.
Great. Let's make our way to the first of the 3 buildings.
Okay. So that's the first one, I think, is Chocolate Judgment Awareness. Or at least that's the first one in the list. I don't know if it's the first one as far as the one that we would encounter first.
Yeah, the thing is, the reason that these are the 3 is that they're kind of an intersection. They're the ones around one of the intersections. So, like, if you're following this path, 2 are in the inner ring, 1 is in the outer ring. And if you parked or you moved to the center of that, these are the 3 buildings that are accessible most directly from there. If you were going to go to any other building, you would have gone to a different spot on the road.
Okay.
So you're really kind of at the center of the 3 of them, and depending on which way you go. What I can tell you here is that Chocolate Judgment Awareness is the one that kind of has the most, old world cathedral-y design. It's got two towers up in front corners. It's got a big, giant front door that's kind of barred, locked, and what look like, it's hard to make out exactly, but what look like they're probably sort of stained glass windows set in a ring around the topmost part of it. It's probably like 3 or 4 stories tall, but hard to say because they don't all have windows, but in that kind of order of size. Guitar Climate Expression is a single floor building, kind of stretches out pretty wide, but basically kind of has this old style, like rustic stone exterior and a lot of different individual sized doors around the outside. And then Bloodbird Establishment is much taller, kind of like a brick skyscraper almost. Not skyscraper, but like tall, like tower building. So probably like 8 stories, something like that, with very intricately detailed gargoyles at the corners every 2 floors up to the top. And then there looks like there's one kind of obvious front entrance, which is kind of like a business entrance where there's like 3 different individual swinging doors that are all next to each other. And then it looks like there's kind of a couple back doors around the other way.
And these sets of words, relate to the meaning of the building itself?
So they relate to, basically the way that works is there's these different like kind of subgroups within the cathedral order. Each of them has a name that translates out essentially to one of these groups of 3 words. And then each of these buildings belongs to one of those.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So whatever it is that group is doing, they're doing it in this building. And the words are related to what they do, but it's not necessarily like completely straightforward.
Are any of these buildings, do they seem to be open or accessible, or do they all seem to be kind of locked and closed?
None of them are like walk-in off the street accessible.
Okay. Do any of them have any obvious like security cameras set up along the outside or perimeter?
I mean, it's a Cossack, right? Yeah. So they can just have magic stuff all over.
Yeah,
I think looking for conventional technology here is probably not
the way to go.
Productive, yeah.
Okay. Molly's going to put on her goggles then and look through the Akashic spectrum and sort of see what those buildings look like.
Okay. So, again, since we're kind of in the magical district here, there's a pretty large amount of energy in general. And that's, of the like 3 major energetic areas, that's probably the one that you have the least familiarity with. So there's definitely a little bit of kind of, trying to separate out the noise here. Because just everything's magical. Everything's really bright and everything. What you can get is that of the 3, Guitar Climate Expression is the one that has far and away the kind of least level of energetic quality to it. So like whatever's going on there, there's just a lot less of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Both of the other 2 have a higher level of kind of ambient energy, and then each has a number of different hot spots within.
Okay.
So there's kind of like, there's obviously like some things or some people or something that individually is kind of relevant or notable inside each of those.
Okay.
And if you want to kind of try to do anything to track the specific signature that you've gotten, then I will need some kind of roll, and I'm trying to think of what that's going to look like.
Okay, let me see what I've got. I've got, I guess, we could maybe like cunning or discipline.
Cunning's probably right.
And analysis, enigmas.
Probably cunning enigmas. I think that's probably the closest to what we're looking at.
Okay. So I have a trick called Code Cracker, which is the character sees patterns in everything, able to tease out correlations. The character is performing any simple investigation or information gathering action. Oh, you just add the enigma skill to the dice pool, but that doesn't matter because it's already enigmas. And then I thought I had one other one that might apply. Nerd. The character sees science in everything. Whenever the character attempts an action to investigate, research, or gather information, you can add the science skill to the dice pool. So I think it would be science, enigmas, and cunning.
Okay.
Okay. So that's 10, I think, total. 8 successes.
Okay. So, looking around, first thing you could definitely tell, based on kind of the way that you got this information, was this kind of ambient recording of the space after Earth disappeared, right? So you could pretty quickly vibe into the fact that is around here somewhere, like it's passed through here. So
Okay.
it definitely kind of suggests that you're in the right neighborhood here. The kind of like most central spot of it that you can kind of observe from where you are is actually kind of near the middle of where you are, and then there's pathways that kind of radiate out to certain degrees from there. Guitar climate expression is really not on the map on this at all. Like nothing seems to be over there at all. And then there's kind of a stronger pathway towards Chocolate Judgment Awareness and a weaker one towards Bloodbird Establishment.
Okay. So, Molly's gonna kind of nudge her goggles back up to her forehead and say, it's looking like Chocolate Judgment Awareness is the most promising, followed by Bloodbird Establishment, and Guitar Climate Expression doesn't seem to have this object, or whatever it is. There doesn't seem to be an association with that building.
Then I think I should see what is possible in terms of gaining entrance to Chocolate Judgment Awareness.
Okay.
Just don't eat any of it. I hear that's a problem for cats.
So, as I mentioned, there's kind of one major front door. Like it's constructed like a church or something in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's these windows around the top, and there's these two tall towers. So there's no other obvious secondary entrances on the ground floor. So like in terms of kind of walking in through a door, there's like a back door or anything that seems to be available. Normal entry would all be through this central one. So if you're gonna take a route in that isn't just going in through the front door, you're gonna have to like work something out on the higher levels.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to make sure I understand. The door is closed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not visibly attended.
It is not visibly attended.
Okay.
There are the door specifically, like there are people around.
Right, yeah.
Each of these buildings, you can assume there's a certain number of people who are kind of like stationed at various places around it enough that they're kind of like watching it or something, but the door itself is not attended at all.
All right. I would like to try to sort of case. You said it's sort of already knowable that there's no other ground floor entrances.
Yep.
I just sort of want to case the place in terms of trying to see if there's any evidence that there's maybe a way in at the upper levels. If that entails, I want to do whatever I can do that's not dead obvious what I'm doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on the number of people around. I think Theron is pretty good at that in terms of, he's a relatively stealthy guy, he's a relatively observant guy, all things being considered for a 7-foot tall cat person.
Yep.
So what, I want to figure out what I can figure out in terms of if there's any other way in.
Okay. Can you give me a roll?
Yeah, that's... Okay. 5.
Okay. So, like you're saying, first kind of case the ground level. It's pretty easy to get a pretty good sense there. There's nothing else really available there. There's a certain amount that you can kind of take in by kind of observing carefully going around the building at that level, and then you can confirm some of your thoughts on that by actually kind of going a little bit out from this section again, finding one of the tar areas that's, kind of less observed, maybe a couple spots back out and, looking from a higher vantage point. You can basically get the sense, first looking, identifying these windows on the top. They seem like they're glass or something like that. They're probably not particularly like impervious, based on what little you can make out externally. It seems like there's kind of a range in terms of what seems to be visible into them. There's kind of a few that seem like they probably let into a large central space, again, based on kind of like what you can make out looking at them from a few different angles, and then a few that seem to let into, smaller individual rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true on them on each side, basically. And then all the ones in the back seem to let into the large central space. And then also each of the towers kind of has like a bell tower type construction where it goes up to a certain height. And then there's kind of a certain, like there's certain opening between like kind of a cap and kind of a spot that presumably you could get to via stairs or something internally.
Mm-hmm.
So they are like partially open air.
Okay, so like if I could get over there, I could get in through a bell tower. It looks like. I believe I can get in. Is that what we're going to do?
Well, I guess how much do we want to... If we're just here to do reconnaissance, how much is reconnaissance before we're starting the mission? And do we want to just do it? Or do we want to get everyone else kind of helping out?
Figuring out where that's... I mean, I guess I'm not there, but like figuring out which building and where it might be in that building are all good things. So yeah, I would just commit.
I'm inclined to give it a go, Captain.
Okay. I'll play lookout.
All right, so I want to find the spot that is the least conspicuous with the least obvious observers adjacent to the building, whatever side that is. Probably not the front, the left or the back or whatever. And scale the... If I can find an opportunity to, I want to try and scale the wall of the next adjacent building, get as high as I can, and then leap onto chocolate...
Judgment awareness.
Environment awareness.
Judgment awareness.
Chocolate judgment awareness.
So the best opportunity for that actually is going to be, so as I mentioned, there's kind of the central building, which is this like 7-sided one that's like really tall in the middle. Just because it's so large, there's like people attending it in a number of spots, but it doesn't have like complete coverage of every spot on the wall, especially because there's like very visibly no other ways in most of these areas into that building.
Mm-hmm.
So your best bet is basically to locate a spot on that where there isn't really anybody obviously hanging around, kind of climb up that, basically kind of hide against one of these, corner pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the names, but like, these things that you have on ornate buildings that kind of are stick out basically. If there's like a little ledge and then there's maybe kind of these pieces that are vertical that run up against it in various spots. But basically kind of climb up.
Buttress?
Is that what a buttress is?
Is that a cornice? I think it's a cornice.
I thought a cornice was an internal thing.
Well, whichever of those it is, your best bet is going to be to kind of climb up, situate yourself, next to one of those as kind of a spot where you can hide and get a sense of what's going on, and then kind of wait for a moment where, based on your kind of scan of the area, it doesn't look like anybody's immediately looking in your direction, and basically just kind of hop and roll over. There's like a little bit of a lip from like whatever the kind of roof is here. So if you can get to the top of the building, there's kind of spots where you can basically be invisible to the ground level and be on that first roof level, and then you kind of have access to the towers.
Great, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, okay. I don't think we need a roll or anything for that, so yeah, you're over. You're on the roof.
All right. Yeah, so basically he digs, using his strength, he digs his claws into the wall and climbs up far enough to leap onto the building, and then scales around until he can get to the opening of one of these bell tower things.
Okay. Yeah, you can come up there. It's unattended. It seems basically open.
Mm-hmm.
Not, there's not really anything there. It's just kind of the top of a tower, right? So yeah, you can get there. Is there anything we want to cut back to the home team on here for a minute?
Yeah. 1 second.
So while Dang is trying on pants,
Oh, God.
So yeah, something.
Wow, that is
We'll
amazing.
put a link in
We'll have to
the
link it in the show
notes.
notes.
I wish everybody who is listening
Alright.
could see this.
Okay.
Yeah, let the record reflect that in the time that we've taken doing this infiltration, Braden has drawn a picture of Dang in a suit.
Reth gives his thumbs up. It's good material.
yeah, Cidra not looking still gives a thumbs up.
It's like, yeah, that's probably
Because
fine.
while Dang is doing that, I'm laying some foundations for a distraction, which is that I'm going to start devaluing a lot of the cathedral's properties. Their wares
Whoa.
in particular at first, but after that starts to move, also maybe some of their real estate.
Okay. So one, devaluing how?
A lot of small, like, what's the term? That term where you, short selling. Like, buying things for incredibly small periods of time, to change their value and then immediately selling them back. So that there's no time for anything to actually be purchased or moved.
Mm-hmm.
But just like phantom buying everything over and over and over again.
Okay.
And I will roll for that. So that's 3 and then anything from scale.
Okay. And in what manner do you expect this to be distracting?
I think it's going to start to suck up essentially like attention resources once people start to notice it.
Okay.
So it's at least a foundation.
Okay.
It's not causing any riots yet.
Okay. So basically it's the kind of thing where ideally some portion of people will be paying attention to it, so that it's a source that if you do something else, you can cause them to like pay more attention to it because they're already kind of watching.
Yeah. And like eyes that would be looking at cameras or like feeds are now looking at this instead.
Okay. So you're all set. So distraction is in place. Dang is in a suit. Anything else you want to have set up here before we cut back over?
Oh, yeah.
Not really. I mean, it's not a clip-on tie, right? Like, it's an actual bow tie.
Well, in the picture, it's actually like one of those Western style,
like a bolo,
old-timey bow tie. Well, no, I guess not a bolo, but like a.
No, like the
looks
big,
like the ascot-y kind of.
So how did he tie that?
Kind of thing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that's what Raleth is doing. I
think his tentacles
with
would
his giant mech hands.
No, I think he does that thing where he pops open the front of the suit and leans out creepily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We established he could do that, right? So yeah, he's definitely Dang is standing in front of the mech, and it comes open, and just the little aardvark hands are reaching out, like tying the tie, and then adjusting it, and then like.
I'm glad we had this moment.
In the background, Nothing Suits Me Like a Suit is playing.
Not Sharp Dressed Man.
Yeah, I was thinking Sharp Dressed Man. You know,
it's a playlist. It takes a while to get dressed.
Yeah, we've cut back and forth to this like 4 times, and each time it's something different from the playlist.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so we cut back over to Raleth. Or not to Raleth, to Theron.
Yes. So I have made it to the bell tower. As theorized, there are stairs.
Yep.
Okay, so I want to proceed, infiltration mode. Very, very carefully, walking, doing my best not to make any noise, listening very intently, senses heightened, trying to make sure that I can anticipate anybody who comes along that might see me so that I can sense them first. And reminding you that I have a significant material bonus to resisting surprise. So
okay, so you can head down the stairs. Eventually, this as well as the other tower let into a kind of a hallway area that you can kind of sense based on just mentally measuring how far you went down, that this is probably in the top section of the main body of the building, so it's not like you're not back down to ground level. And it's kind of like overly ornate, but in this like weird way. There's this kind of purple carpet with kind of white markings that make geographic, symbols that kind of resemble the ones, like the angles and everything that you saw embedded in the streets of the section. So there's kind of a parallel there. There are a variety of things that are kind of along the walls that are kind of framed as if they're paintings, but each one is basically just a small calligraphy in a language that you don't recognize. So, just kind of periodically around the walls. There are a variety of doorways padding off from here, but they're all kind of small. None of them, seem to have any obvious individual importance. And then at the far end, there's the hallway kind of splits. It kind of tees off, splits in two in two different directions. And at that end, there are actually some people, similar kind of stash setup that you saw before, kind of actually stationed near those. So, you can kind of come in and hide pretty straightforwardly, but you can see like there's areas that there's some people kind of blocking off.
If I understand correctly, I come down the staircase. I have one option. That option ends with two options, both of which are guarded. Is that right?
Yes, and then there's smaller doors along the way.
Oh, there are smaller doors too.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I do not have the benefit of Molly's Akashic vision here. So within the building, I don't have any obvious leads.
Not obvious, no. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is just like kind of this is the stealth in, so like there's other stuff you could investigate or whatever, but nothing else that's like already established.
Okay, so you said there's some secondary doors that could be explored. Is there anything that differentiates itself in terms of how protected or important it looks?
It's really just the two hallways at the end where it tees off. All the other ones are pretty seem pretty nondescript and pretty similar. Like I don't really I guess know that much about like the details of like what things that are in a church or whatever are called, but like there's a series of rooms that presumably are used for something, and like presumably the people who operate here like have reasons that they go to each of these, but like it has the feel of like offices, like professor offices in a school building, or something like that. Like
that was the vibe I was getting. There isn't. I mean, as the person in this group who probably knows the most about church architecture, there isn't, so far as I'm aware of, a specific name for something like an office in a church. Maybe like a cell, if it was like a person's room in an abbey or something. But
yeah, that's probably like I don't want to imply the other meaning of cell, but that's probably
right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, monk's quarters, cell, that kind of thing.
All right. Then I think I will take the door that is the furthest away from that intersection where there are people, right? So the least likely to make a noise that would be noticeable.
Okay.
I assume the door doesn't have any windows on it or anything else that would... Okay, so... And
I
want to...
just to be clear, it's not like a technological... Like, it's like a wooden door or something. So you can tell that there's no light.
I got that. This is like a low-tech sort of situation.
Yeah, you can tell there's no light inside. If there is a way to, like, illuminate the room inside, then it's not on.
Okay, and listening at it, I don't get anything?
Nope. Quiet.
Okay. Then I want to open it. Either if it's unlocked, then I'll just open it. If it's locked, then I will force it as quietly as possible.
It is not locked.
Oh, okay. Easy. So I'll open it. Yeah. I'll open it wide and see what I see and make a snap judgment about whether to go in or not on the basis of what I see.
It is literally an office.
It's literally an office.
It is literally an office.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a very nice wooden desk. There's a somewhat less nice chair that's pulled into the desk. There's some various books and weird geometrical like objects carved into wood or cast into metal or something that are kind of sitting around like weird magical paperweights. There's like a hat rack that doesn't have anything on it. And there's various and sundry types of like papers spread out in various places.
Okay, and no evidence of anybody else being in here at the moment.
Oh, it's definitely empty.
Okay, so
like you're going into an office after hours, basically. Is the sense you're getting.
I'll close the door. I want to poke around a little bit quickly. I mean, I recognize I don't have an infinite amount of time here. Just see if there's... I mean, I gather that there's some language... There's already some language stuff I've already encountered in this building that I can't understand, right? But I should have some ability to read in multiple languages on the basis of the way the translator thing works, right? So just to see if there's anything that I can see quickly looking around that might give me any information about what's going on in the building, any directions to anything more important than what I'm seeing here. Just sort of like very quick surface level, anything gleanable from this room.
Yep. So looking around just quickly, like it makes it obvious in kind of the comparison, especially there, that like whatever these, calligraphic pictures or whatever are, that like there's something specific to them in terms of whatever way they're magical or whatever that is why they don't have any meaning to you. Everything else in here, it's some other weird language, but it's all translated as normal. So you see books with various kind of like overwrought, like academic type titles on the shelves. There's a name tag basically on the desk, which just says Keldano, Keldano. And then the papers on there are legible. So let's get some kind of roll to just kind of see like how effectively you can hunt something out from those.
So Theron is specifically good at crime scene investigation and the like.
I think, is that like, I guess the question there is like, is that because like he has unusually like good like basically is it what's the word for forensic? Is it because he has particularly good like forensic ability, or is it because he has particularly good like instincts about what things are most likely to be relevant when you're quickly investigating a place in that kind of context?
Let's see. The way that works is so he just has a high analysis, right? I'm not trying to suggest that this is a crime scene, so I'm not necessarily saying that his specialty should apply. He just has a high analysis. And analysis is essentially your ability to gather sensory information and your ability to make sense of the sensory information.
Yep.
Right?
So that sounds correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll roll, I think what we want is cunning plus analysis. 5, and I have the skill trick detailed investigator, which I think is relevant. Let me... whenever the character uses an action to spot or analyze a scene as an extended action, she reduces the number of miles... Well, okay, so... yes, so I guess it doesn't apply. So anyways, 5 successes.
Okay. Yeah, so, digging around, like, you find a lot of the type of, content that you would kind of expect to find in this type of, in an academics or a church elders type office or whatever. Because, for all that, like, the Cathedral Order is kind of like, an illicit gang, like, they're also just a big, dweeby organization as well. So they have a lot of people who just, have various things that they have to kind of bureaucratically do in the course of, like, running this whole thing. So, there's a lot of kind of like random boring paperwork that you kind of look at briefly and kind of shove aside. There's, there's like a schedule, basically, like a calendar, time ledger or something that doesn't, flipping through it seem to be particularly interesting or relevant. Eventually there's kind of two things basically that seem to have some relevance. One is not too detailed, but basically kind of like, layout map of the inside of the building that gives you a pretty good sense of where things, where things are. So you can like locate yourself on that. You can see that there's kind of there's the big central area, and then there's kind of 2 upper floors that don't like the central area goes all the way to the roof for about half the building, and then it gets lower, and then there are 2 other floors above it in that section. That's where you are. You're on the topmost of those. And most of both of those is kind of spent on these type of offices and stuff like that. But at the end of those hallways, basically, there are 2 here and then 1 on the floor below you, basically like special ceremonial rooms that have like each kind of a different weird little like sigil that kind of represents them. And, they're marked on the map in such a way that it's kind of like, it's kind of purposely vague, like what the deal is with them. But it's clear that they have an importance that is not really the same as like what any of these offices are. And then there's also what basically amounts to a memo, which is basically just instructing the people in the office that during a time period which, starts a number of days before now and ends a number of days after now. So you're basically right smack in the middle of it. That one of these rooms, this would be the one that's downstairs from you can recognize it by the sigil, is going to be playing host to. It simply says the Eye, but the Eye is in red. And therefore that basically like the security on that hallway is going to be advanced, and please don't shortcut through that area as something horrible might happen to you. Left extremely vague as to whether they mean like you will get in trouble with the organization or you will be atomized. So,
devoured by 1,000 faces. Okay, that sounds like a big honkin' lead. Then this seems like enough to take back to the group, and we'll go from there. So I'm satisfied now with carefully making sure that things are in order in the office, opening the door again, closing it behind me, and going back out the way that I came.
Okay.
That's it this week for the Chimera. You can reach us online at thechimera.space, which is also our Tumblr. If you want to find us on Tumblr, that's where you'd look. And you can also find us on Twitter or Facebook at ChimeraPod, or by emailing us at itsthechimera@gmail.com. And if you get a second, stop by iTunes or Stitcher and leave a rating and review, and help us find some new people, or help them find us would probably be a better way of thinking about it. And we will see you in 2 weeks, 2 Mondays from today.
Okay.
Okay, everybody talk again.
Doing a
What?
brief
Okay.
check.
I'm talking
of-
some.
Casey sounds
Okay,
really
now
weird
I
to
see
me.
something.
Casey's got an echo
Uh-oh.
somehow.
Oh, looks like something might be up too high for you, Casey.
What would...
It's not that hard. She's relatively short.
Where would I be?
Oh, no, now it looks a little more normal.
Oh, Jesus. Well,
Yeah.